A couple of weeks ago, I went for a run on the Greenway in some brand new shoes. It had just rained, and so the path was strewn with tiny pieces of wood and leaves. The storm had stirred up insects, and the wind had blown rocks on the trail. The padding and cushioning of my new shoes eased the impact of the ground on my body, and for this I was feeling very grateful. Approaching me from the opposite direction was a man who was also on a run. As he came into focus, I noticed that this man was barefoot. All I could think was, ouch. Actually, in the interest of full disclosure, I have a problem with bare feet. Since I was a child, I really don't like them. And so my first thought was actually, yuck. And then I thought, ouch. All those little pieces of wood and shards of leaves, all those insects and rocks, the impact of the ground, he was feeling it all. And I was struck by how protected I was on this run, how vulnerable he had chosen to be. I may have been more comfortable, but I'll bet he knows more about the Greenway. It reminded me of comedian Colin Dwyer's short essay entitled The Unbearable Lightness of Footwear, in which he writes, "When we invented footwear, probably some 40,000 years ago, according to paleoanthropologists, we also slipped a surface between ourselves and the world. Where we once were touching the ground with skin, shoes changed all of this. With shoes, we swapped intimacy for a well-regulated separation. Maybe shoes are to blame," he suggests, "for acts of human insensitivity, because the moment we slipped a surface between ourselves and the ground, we lost our intimate connection with the earth." His words propel shoes out of the realm of apparel and into the symbolic. Shoes become a metaphor for the ways we insulate ourselves, protect ourselves, and distance ourselves from the difficult or painful aspects of our world. Our shoes come to represent all the trappings of our lives, our neighborhoods, our families, our education, our jobs, our money, all the privileges and priorities we possess, that we clutch tightly and that form a barrier between us and the rough terrain of the rest of the world. And while I have no rabbinic advice about running barefoot on the Greenway, Dwyer's words do shed light on the most famous barefoot moment in our Torah. Moses, the shepherd who's fled Egypt for the suburbs of Midian, years before, notices a bush on fire. Something inside him won't let him pass by. The bush, the fire, the sense that he somehow needed, all of these beckon to him, and he begins to approach the bush. But then a voice comes from it, and Moses is given an unexpected command by the voice of God emanating from within the flames. The command is, "Al tikrav halom, shal na'alecha me'al raglecha, ki hamakom asher ata omed alav admat kodesh hu." Don't approach yet. Take your shoes off your feet, for the land that you stand upon is holy ground. God wants to engage Moses in a holy purpose, but Moses must be ready. Perhaps God's order for Moses to remove his shoes is not so much a ritual plea, don't desecrate this holy ground with your dusty shoes, but rather a moral plea, meaning this: you must rid yourself of protective layers that keep you from feeling. Remove from your life the elements that keep you separate and disconnected from the world if you are truly to be an instrument of God's goodness. The vulnerability and intimacy that comes with this simple act of removing his shoes is what allows Moses to confront the flames, to discern God's voice within them, and to summon the courage to hearken to it. One of my favorite parenting writers, best-selling author, Glennon Doyle Melton, published a letter on her blog, Momastery, that she wrote to her third-grade son on his first day of school. And these are her words: "If you see a child being left out or hurt or teased, a little part of your heart will hurt a little. We want you to trust that heartache. your whole life, we want you to notice and trust your heartache. That heartache is called compassion, and it is God's signal to you to do something. It is God saying, wake up. One of my babies is hurting. Do something to help. Whenever you feel compassion, it means God is speaking to you, and that is magic. It means God trusts you, and God needs you. She is, in essence, saying what God says to Moses. Open up your heart. Open up your soul to what's around you, even if that choice opens you up to pain as well. The ground may give you cuts and bruises, but you will stand firmer on it by touching it with your skin. Her words apply to each of us at any age, and though she is not Jewish, her sentiments are deeply Jewish. Alleviating the pain of the stranger, because we were strangers in Egypt, is the most often repeated commandment in our entire Torah. We learn from our Torah that our moral imperatives arise not from some high and disconnected place. Lo bashamayim hi, as we just heard Rabbi Wallner read. It is not in heaven. Our ethics, our principles, emerge from our relationships with other people. Our godly actions flow from our shared humanity, our deep connection, our intimacy as friends and neighbors. Our empathy, the Torah asserts, will move us to create a more just world. If we don't infuse our lives with opportunities to understand the pain of others, if we never activate our empathy, if we remain insulated, cushioned, and separate, justice will forever elude us. If we do not remove our shoes and feel the holy ground we tread upon, if we don't pay attention to our heartache, we will not hear God's voice speaking to us, and we will not follow in Moses' footsteps of bringing about redemption to those who need it most. What holds us back from truly knowing and feeling the pain of those in our community? Why do we avoid taking off our shoes, avoid listening to our heartache and doing something with it? I don't think it's because we harbor hate or indifference in our hearts. That may be true for a few, but for most of us, the answer is far more benign. We all carry around so much pain. We all suffer in our health, in relationships with loved ones, with addictions, with stresses from our professions or our finances, with various forms of abuse, with self-doubt and anxiety, with depression, with loneliness. And these personal challenges are incredibly taxing. On some days, this may be all we have the bandwidth to face, or so we think. We need our armor to get through a day in our own lives. We also may feel afraid for our personal safety. Should we venture outside our comfort zones? The ground is rocky and dangerous. We may feel afraid that we will learn we've done something wrong, somehow perpetuated an unjust system, and that this will require a change in our lifestyle were we to truly face it. Without shoes on, we become aware of what we're crushing on the ground, what life we're snuffing out, what flowers we're trampling. With shoes on, we don't have to know. Moses is terrified during this exchange with God at the burning bush. He is an unenthusiastic prophet. Even as he approaches the burning bush and hears God's plans for him, he actually tries desperately to get out of it all. But God convinces him by saying that he won't have to do this work alone, that he will have his brother Aaron and he will have God with him. That however flawed or fearful he, Moses, is capable of making this change in his life, of speaking truth to power, of being someone who brings more redemption and more justice into the world. Once barefoot and aware of the holy ground he stands upon, Moses is poised to make a real difference. How is he to begin? With courage. Moses, with a little faith in himself and in his capacity to bring something, to give something new, takes those first few painful steps toward the fire. What does this have to do with us? God speaks to us from within flames all the time. The flames of chaos and hurt and injustice and tragedy. And we, like Moses, must decide how we're going to respond. It takes courage to respond with openness and with a willingness to risk something, to lose something, and to learn something. But each step toward the fire, toward the chaos, is a step in the right direction. With our metaphorical shoes off, we will see and feel so much more, and this will be hard, even painful. But this is the state in which God wants us to engage with the world. Open, vulnerable, with a true sense of intimacy and authenticity. For us, Memphis is our holy ground. Let us take our shoes off and truly feel it. Leave a footprint we're proud of. And let us, vulnerable and connected to it, approach some of the fires of chaos and pain that are right before our eyes. The chaotic fire of homelessness and families in need. Just last month, Memphis lost 11 people, and among them 7 precious children, in a horrible house fire caused by accident that turned catastrophic. Bars on the doors and the windows, meant to protect, actually created a prison for an entire family. With our bare feet standing on holy ground, we will face this fire by building houses next week with our community that will protect 33 children from subpar housing and the dangers and hardships that go with it. The chaotic fire of the scars of racial terrorism. The Equal Justice Initiative found in their research that there have been at least 21 lynchings in Shelby County alone. All of their sites unmarked until now. With our bare feet standing on holy ground, we can join others in the greater Memphis faith community and painstakingly mark each of the 21 lynching sites so that reconciliation can take place through truth-telling and public acknowledgement of the evils in our collective past. The chaotic fire of our criminal justice system. People of color make up nearly 60% of the prison population in our country, while only being 25% of the general population. And thousands of children are prosecuted as adults in our country. With our bare feet standing on holy ground, we can listen to those on the front lines of this issue today at 3 p.m. and learn how we can become advocates for the most vulnerable in our communities. The chaotic fire of economic and educational inequality. More than half the children in Shelby County are born into poverty, which has lifelong effects on their development, their access to good schools, and even their lifespan. With our bare feet standing on holy ground, we will mentor and support schools like Perea Preschool, like Wells Station, so that the precious children of Shelby County, children of immigrants, children living in poverty, can have their horizons broadened. The chaotic fire of a scarred and segregated city. Memphis is a city with a difficult history and a wide disparity among neighborhoods and resources. With our bare feet standing on holy ground, we are so excited to announce that Temple Israel will have a presence at the new Crosstown Concourse. Our new space will be our congregation's social justice hub for the city, allowing us to be a part of breaking down barriers, building a collaborative, renewed Memphis, and partnering on the most pressing social issues of the day with other organizations under the same roof. All of us, change agents, building a better Memphis. In closing, I'd like to share with you a poem about fire and chaos, but also about vulnerability and connection. This poem is by Warsan Shir, a British poet with Somali parents. They set my aunt's house on fire. I cried the way women do on TV, folding at the middle like a 5-pound note. I called the boy who used to love me, tried to okay my voice. I said, hello. He said, Warsan, what's wrong? What happened? I've been praying, and these are what my prayers look like. I come from 2 countries. One is thirsty, the other is on fire. Both need water. Later that night, I held an atlas on my lap, ran my fingers across the whole world, and whispered, where does it hurt? It answered, everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. God, we know the world hurts. We know that the fire of chaos and the thirst for meaning surround us all the time. Help us to be a balm, a healing presence, a compassionate force for those who are suffering right before our eyes. May we, like Moses, push beyond our fears, our boundaries, our isolation, and our apathy to choose intimacy, empathy, and relationship. Help us to hear your voice from within the flames, to swerve off the path of ease and privilege, and come closer, to remove our shoes and say, as Moses did, Hineni, here I am, ready to take the first step. Ken Yehi Ratzon.